My name is Sarah. I'm 28, and last Saturday, at my sister Emma's wedding, my parents stood before 200 guests and declared they only had one daughter. The words hit me like a freight train as I sat in the front row watching my entire family disown me in the most public way imaginable. What started as Emma's dream wedding became my worst nightmare when Mom grabbed the microphone during her speech and said, "We're so blessed to celebrate our only daughter today." The gasps from relatives who'd known me my whole life still echo in my ears. But here's what nobody knew. This wasn't just cruel punishment for some family disagreement. This was the beginning of the most satisfying revenge story you'll ever hear. Hey everyone, before we dive into this absolutely wild family drama, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers worldwide. If you're ready for a story that'll have your jaw on the floor with twists you never saw coming, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this family revenge tale is about to get insane. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Growing up, everyone always said Emma and I were the perfect sisters. She was 2 years younger, blonde, bubbly, and everything our parents wanted in a daughter. I was the responsible one. Valedictorian, full scholarship to Northwestern, graduated summa cum laude with a business degree. While Emma partied through community college and bounced between part-time jobs, I built a successful marketing consultancy from scratch. But our parents always favored Emma. When she needed money for her apartment, they'd write a check. When I asked for a small loan to expand my business, suddenly they were watching their expenses. When Emma got engaged to Marcus, a guy she'd known for 8 months, our parents immediately offered to pay for a $50,000 wedding. When I got engaged to David 3 years ago, they said they'd already spent their wedding budget and gave us $500. The favoritism wasn't subtle. At family gatherings, they'd brag about Emma's latest adventure while glossing over my achievements. When I bought my first house at 25, Dad's response was, "Well, Emma's still finding herself." When Emma moved back home at 26 because she couldn't afford rent, Mom called it family bonding time. I thought I'd accepted their preference for Emma. I thought I'd made peace with being the forgotten daughter. But nothing prepared me for what happened 3 months ago that led to Saturday's public humiliation. It started when Emma called me crying. Marcus had broken up with her, she was devastated, and she needed someone to talk to. Being the supportive sister I'd always been, I drove to her apartment with ice cream and tissues. We talked for hours about love, relationships, and what she wanted in life. During that conversation, Emma confessed something that changed everything. She'd been stealing money from our parents for years. Not small amounts. We're talking about thousands of dollars taken from Dad's business account, forged checks, and credit cards opened in Mom's name. She'd been living way beyond her means, funding a lifestyle of designer clothes, expensive trips, and fancy dinners that our parents assumed she could afford. But here's the kicker. She'd been blaming the missing money on me. Every time our parents discovered discrepancies, Emma would create elaborate stories about how I'd borrowed money and forgotten to mention it, or how I'd used their credit cards during emergencies. She'd even created fake text conversations to support her lies. I was stunned. This explained so much: why our parents had become colder toward me over the past few years, why they questioned my financial requests, why they seemed to think I was irresponsible with money despite my successful business. Emma had been systematically destroying my reputation to cover her theft. The worst part, when I confronted her with evidence I'd gathered: bank statements, forged signatures, credit card applications with her handwriting. She didn't deny it. Instead, she laughed and said, "They'll never believe you over me. They love me more, and you know it." She was right, and that realization broke something inside me. When I tried to tell our parents the truth, they accused me of being jealous and trying to sabotage Emma's happiness. Mom actually said, "Sarah, we know you've always resented Emma, but making up stories about theft is a new low." That's when Emma announced she was back together with Marcus and they were getting married in 3 months. Our parents were overjoyed, immediately offering to pay for the wedding they'd already budgeted for. The same wedding funded partially by Emma's stolen money. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with years of theft and lies. I couldn't stand by while she continued to manipulate our parents and destroy my reputation. But I also knew that confronting her directly had failed miserably, so I started planning. If Emma wanted to play games, I'd play better. If she thought she could steal and lie her way through life while making me the scapegoat, she had another thing coming. The wedding would be perfect, perfectly devastating for everyone who'd wronged me. The next 3 months became my mission. I channeled every skill I'd learned building my business into investigating my own sister's crimes. I hired a private investigator, a forensic accountant, and even consulted with a white-collar crime attorney about the evidence I was gathering. The PI, Janet Morrison, was a former police detective who specialized in financial fraud cases. When I showed her the initial evidence I'd collected, her eyes lit up. "This isn't just sibling rivalry," she said. "This is systematic fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. Your sister has committed multiple felonies." Janet's investigation revealed the full scope of Emma's deception. Over 4 years, she'd stolen nearly $80,000 from our parents through various schemes. She'd opened 7 credit cards in Mom's name, forged Dad's signature on business checks, and even taken out a personal loan using their house as collateral without their knowledge. But Emma was smart about it. She'd steal just enough to stay under the radar, then blame missing money on legitimate expenses or family members. She'd pay minimum balances on the fraudulent credit cards to avoid late notices, and she'd intercept mail to prevent our parents from seeing statements. The forensic accountant Richard Chen helped me map out every transaction. We created a detailed timeline showing exactly when money disappeared and how Emma had covered her tracks. Richard's analysis proved that the thefts always coincided with Emma's expensive purchases: designer bags, luxury vacations, high-end electronics. What really sealed the case was Emma's digital footprint. The white-collar attorney advised me to check social media and financial apps for evidence of her lifestyle. Emma had documented everything on Instagram: designer clothes, with price tags, expensive restaurant meals, luxury hotel stays. When we compared her documented lifestyle to her declared income from part-time work, the math didn't add up. But I needed more than financial evidence. I needed to prove that Emma had been deliberately framing me. This required getting access to her phone and computer, which seemed impossible until Marcus unknowingly became my ally. Marcus reached out to me a month before the wedding, concerned about Emma's spending habits. He'd noticed she always had money for expensive things but claimed to be broke when it came to wedding expenses. He'd also overheard her talking to friends about borrowing money from family without permission. I carefully shared some of my concerns with Marcus, framing them as worries about Emma's financial responsibility before marriage. I showed him evidence of the forged checks and credit card applications, explaining that I was trying to protect both Emma and our parents from potential legal consequences. Marcus was horrified. He agreed to help me access Emma's devices to gather more evidence, believing he was helping his fiancée avoid criminal charges. Through Marcus, I obtained screenshots of text conversations where Emma bragged to friends about stealing money and letting Sarah take the blame. I got photos of her handwritten notes planning which lies to tell about specific transactions. The most damaging evidence came from Emma's laptop, where she'd kept detailed records of her schemes in a folder labeled Emergency Fund. She documented every theft with notes about how to blame me if questioned. One entry read, "Took $800 from Dad's account for new purse. If he notices, we'll say Sarah borrowed it for business expenses and forgot to mention it." By the week of the wedding, I had everything: financial records, forged documents, communications proving intent, and evidence of systematic fraud spanning 4 years. I had enough evidence to send Emma to prison and completely exonerate myself of any wrongdoing. But I wanted more than legal justice. I wanted our parents to understand exactly how they'd been manipulated. I wanted them to face the consequences of choosing their favorite daughter over truth and fairness. I wanted everyone who'd watched them treat me like a second-class family member to witness their humiliation. The wedding would be Emma's moment of triumph, the culmination of years of successful manipulation and theft. It would also be her downfall, and I was going to make sure everyone saw it happen. I spent the final weeks before the wedding preparing my presentation. I organized evidence into a clear timeline, prepared copies for key family members, and planned exactly when and how to reveal the truth. I even hired a videographer to document the moment, ostensibly as a surprise gift for the bride and groom. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow, everything would change. Emma's carefully constructed lies would crumble, our parents would learn the truth about their favorite daughter, and I would finally get the justice I deserved. I'd spent months planning this moment, and I was ready to execute the most satisfying revenge in family history. Quick pause here. If you're as shocked as I was discovering all of this family betrayal, you're going to want to stick around because what happens next will blow your mind. Hit that notification bell because this story is about to reach levels of family drama that belong in a movie. Wedding day arrived with perfect weather and perfect irony. I watched Emma get ready, knowing it would be the last morning she'd wake up as the golden child. She looked radiant in her designer dress, the same dress she'd bought with money stolen from our parents' retirement fund. The ceremony was beautiful, and I played my role perfectly. I smiled during photos, gave a heartfelt toast at the rehearsal dinner the night before, and helped with wedding preparations like the devoted sister everyone expected me to be. Marcus looked nervous, but I attributed it to normal wedding jitters rather than his knowledge of what was coming. The reception started flawlessly. Our parents were beaming, proud to show off their successful event planning and their perfect daughter's perfect wedding. Dad gave a touching speech about watching his baby girl grow up, and Mom followed with emotional words about Emma's pure heart and generous spirit. Then came my moment. I'd arranged with the DJ to let me give a special surprise presentation for the bride and groom. As family and friends settled in with fresh drinks, I took the microphone and smiled warmly at the crowd. "Thank you all for celebrating Emma and Marcus today," I began, my voice steady and confident. As Emma's older sister, I wanted to share some special memories and show everyone what kind of person Emma really is. The lights dimmed as my presentation began on the large screens around the reception hall. What guests expected to be a sweet slideshow of childhood photos instead became a detailed exposé of Emma's criminal activities. The first slides showed Emma's Instagram posts from the past 4 years, luxury vacations, designer purchases, expensive restaurants, alongside her reported income from part-time jobs. "Many of you have admired Emma's lifestyle," I narrated calmly. "You've probably wondered how she affords such nice things on her income. Today, I'm going to answer that question." Murmurs started as guests realized this wasn't a typical wedding presentation. Emma's face went white, and she tried to reach for the microphone, but Marcus, following our plan, gently held her back. The next slides revealed the financial evidence: bank statements, showing unauthorized withdrawals, credit card applications with forged signatures, and business checks with Dad's signature that he never signed. Over the past 4 years, Emma has stolen nearly $80,000 from our parents, I announced matter-of-factly. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, and the scraping of chairs as people stood up to get better views of the screens. Our parents looked confused and horrified, still processing what they were seeing. But I wasn't finished. The most damaging evidence came next: screenshots of Emma's text conversations where she bragged about stealing money and framing me. Her own words appeared on screen, admitting to crimes and laughing about how easily she manipulated our parents. "For years, Emma blamed these thefts on me," I continued as the room fell silent. "Every time money went missing, she created elaborate lies to make our parents think I was the irresponsible one. She systematically destroyed my reputation to cover her crimes." The final slides showed Emma's detailed records from her laptop, her own documentation of every theft, every lie, every plan to frame me. Her handwriting was clearly visible, making denial impossible. "These are Emma's own notes," I said, my voice now carrying 4 years of suppressed anger, written in her handwriting, saved on her computer, documenting every crime and every lie she told about me. The room was dead silent except for the sound of our mother crying. Dad's face had gone from confusion to rage as he stared at the screens showing his own forged signature. Emma sat frozen, her perfect wedding dress now seeming like a costume for an elaborate fraud. But I had one more surprise. I've spent months gathering this evidence because Emma told me something 3 months ago that I'll never forget. I paused, looking directly at my sister. She said, "They'll never believe you over me. They love me more, and you know it." That's when I revealed the recording. Emma's own voice filled the reception hall, clear and unmistakable. "I've been stealing money from them for years. The missing money they blame on Sarah, that was all me. But they'll never believe her over me because they love me more." The silence that followed was deafening. 200 guests sat in stunned disbelief as the full scope of Emma's betrayal became clear. She hadn't just stolen money, she'd manipulated our parents' love to destroy her own sister. Emma finally found her voice, screaming that I was lying, that I'd fabricated everything. But the evidence was overwhelming, and her own recorded confession made denial futile. Marcus stood up slowly, removed his wedding ring, and placed it on the table before walking out without a word. Our parents approached the head table, Dad's business-trained eye already calculating the financial damage, while Mom struggled to reconcile the daughter she thought she knew with the criminal mastermind revealed on screen. "Sarah," Dad said quietly, his voice breaking. "We need to talk, we need to. We owe you." But I wasn't ready for their apologies. I had one final revelation that would complete my revenge and ensure Emma faced real consequences for her actions. "There's one more thing everyone should know," I announced, taking the microphone again. "This morning I filed a formal complaint with the district attorney's office. Emma will be arrested for fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. The evidence has been turned over to law enforcement, and criminal charges are pending." That's when Emma collapsed, the weight of her ruined wedding, lost marriage, and impending criminal prosecution finally overwhelming her. As guests rushed to help, I walked out of the reception hall, leaving behind years of family dysfunction and finally getting the justice I deserved. The golden child had fallen, and this time there was no one else to blame. The days following Emma's wedding disaster moved like a blur of police interviews, family confrontations, and media attention. Local news picked up the story when someone leaked footage of my presentation, turning our family drama into a cautionary tale about financial fraud and sibling rivalry gone wrong. Emma was arrested 3 days after her failed wedding. I watched from my living room window as police led her away in handcuffs, her designer clothes replaced with an orange jumpsuit that seemed to symbolize her fall from grace. The image felt surreal after years of watching her get away with everything. The investigation moved quickly once law enforcement had my evidence. Detective Rodriguez, the lead investigator, told me it was one of the most well-documented fraud cases he'd ever seen. "Your sister kept better records than most criminals we catch," he said with dark humor. "It's like she wanted to get caught." What surprised everyone was how cooperative Marcus became once he understood the full extent of Emma's deception. He provided additional evidence from their shared finances, revealing that Emma had also been stealing from him during their relationship. She'd used his credit cards for personal purchases, forged his signature on loan applications, and even emptied their joint savings account the week before the wedding. "I thought I was marrying someone irresponsible with money," Marcus told investigators. "I never imagined I was engaged to a professional con artist." He filed his own charges against Emma, adding to her growing legal troubles. Our parents' reaction was perhaps the most devastating part of the whole ordeal. Mom, aged 10 years in 3 days, the stress of discovering her favorite daughter's crimes taking a visible toll. Dad threw himself into damage control, working with lawyers and accountants to assess the full extent of their financial losses. The forensic audit revealed even more theft than I'd initially discovered. Emma had been stealing since high school, starting small with cash from Mom's purse and gradually escalating to major financial fraud. The total amount stolen over 6 years exceeded $100,000 when interest and fees were calculated. But the financial damage wasn't the worst part for our parents. The psychological manipulation cut deeper than any monetary loss. They had to confront years of believing Emma's lies about me, years of treating me like a second-class family member, based on fabricated stories designed to cover criminal activity. Dad called me for the first time since the wedding disaster, his voice hollow with shame. "Sarah, I don't know how to begin apologizing for what we put you through. We failed you as parents in every possible way." I let him talk, listening to years of suppressed guilt pour out. He admitted they'd always favored Emma, always found excuses for her behavior, always chosen to believe her over evidence that should have raised red flags. The preferential treatment I'd experienced wasn't just parental favoritism, it was enablement of criminal behavior. Mom's apology came in person, tears streaming down her face as she sat in my living room surrounded by evidence of the successful life I'd built despite their neglect. "We robbed you of unconditional love," she said quietly. "We made you earn affection that Emma got for free, and we used that against you when she needed someone to blame." Their guilt was satisfying, but it didn't erase decades of feeling like an outsider in my own family. The damage to our relationships would take years to repair if it could be repaired at all. The media attention brought unexpected support from extended family members who'd witnessed years of Emma's manipulation. Aunt Linda called to apologize for believing Emma's stories about my supposed financial irresponsibility. Cousin Mike admitted he'd always suspected something was wrong but hadn't known how to address it. "Emma had us all fooled," Uncle Robert said during one family gathering. "She was so good at playing the victim that we never questioned her stories. We should have supported you more." The family reckoning extended beyond immediate relatives. Grandparents, cousins, and family friends reached out to express support and share their own suspicions about Emma's behavior. Many admitted they'd noticed inconsistencies in her stories but had chosen to stay quiet rather than cause family drama. Emma's former friends began coming forward with their own stories of manipulation and theft. Jessica revealed that Emma had stolen jewelry during sleepovers. Amanda discovered missing money after Emma visited her apartment. Pattern after pattern emerged of someone who'd been manipulating and stealing from people who trusted her for years. The legal proceedings moved forward steadily. Emma initially pleaded not guilty, maintaining her innocence despite overwhelming evidence. Her public defender eventually convinced her to accept a plea deal that would result in 3 years in prison, plus restitution and probation. I attended every court hearing, watching Emma's transformation from confident manipulator to broken defendant. The sister who'd once laughed about getting away with crimes now sat silently as prosecutors detailed her years of fraud and manipulation. The restitution hearing was particularly satisfying. Emma would be required to pay back every stolen dollar plus interest and legal fees, a debt that would follow her for decades. Her future earnings would be garnished, her credit destroyed, her financial freedom gone. But perhaps the most fitting consequence was the complete destruction of her social standing. The wedding video went viral on social media, making Emma infamous as the bride exposed for financial fraud at her own reception. Potential employers Googled her name and found endless articles about her crimes. Friends distanced themselves to avoid association with her notoriety. The golden child who'd once seemed untouchable now faced a future defined by consequences she could never escape. Meanwhile, I finally received the recognition and respect I'd always deserved from family members who could no longer ignore the truth. Justice was being served, but the best part was still to come. 6 months after the wedding disaster, my life transformed in ways I never expected. The family business Dad had always planned to leave to Emma, he offered it to me instead, recognizing that I had the integrity and competence he'd somehow overlooked for years. The marketing consultancy I'd built from scratch expanded rapidly as news of my story spread. Clients appreciated working with someone who demonstrated such thorough investigative skills and ethical standards under pressure. If Sarah can expose fraud in her own family, imagine what she can do for our brand. Reputation became an unexpected selling point. More importantly, the family dynamics I'd accepted as permanent began shifting dramatically. Mom started therapy to understand how she'd enabled Emma's manipulation for years. Dad enrolled in courses about recognizing financial fraud, determined never to be victimized again. They were genuinely trying to become better parents, though years of damage couldn't be undone quickly. The extended family rallied around me in unprecedented ways. Grandmother revised her will, explaining that she now understood which granddaughter truly embodied family values. Cousins who'd barely acknowledged me at previous gatherings suddenly wanted to maintain closer relationships. The family narrative changed completely once Emma's manipulation was exposed. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source: other fraud victims who'd heard my story. I began receiving calls and emails from people whose siblings, children, or parents had stolen from them, seeking advice on gathering evidence and pursuing justice. These conversations revealed a disturbing pattern. Family financial fraud was more common than anyone realized, often enabled by relatives who chose to believe manipulative family members over obvious evidence. My story had given other victims courage to speak up and seek justice. That's when I decided to start a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping family fraud victims. Using skills I developed, exposing Emma, I began assisting people in documenting theft, gathering evidence, and navigating legal systems. The organization grew rapidly as word spread about our success rate. Emma's prison sentence began 8 months after her arrest. I attended the sentencing hearing, watching her apologize to the court in what appeared to be genuine remorse. She looked broken, her confidence and arrogance replaced by resignation and fear. During her victim impact statement opportunity, Emma asked to speak directly to me. Through tears, she admitted that jealousy had driven her crimes from the beginning. She'd resented my academic success, my business achievements, and my ability to earn respect through hard work rather than manipulation. "I knew I could never measure up to you legitimately," she said, her voice barely audible. "So I tried to tear you down instead of building myself up. I destroyed our family because I couldn't handle being the less successful sister." Her confession was satisfying but also sad. Emma had possessed intelligence and charm that could have led to genuine success if she'd chosen honest paths instead of criminal ones. She'd destroyed her own potential along with our family relationships. The prison sentence marked the end of Emma's ability to manipulate our parents, but it also began an unexpected healing process for our family. Without Emma's constant drama and lies, Mom and Dad could finally see clearly how their favoritism had damaged both daughters. They began making genuine efforts to understand my perspective and validate experiences they'd previously dismissed. Family dinners became opportunities for honest conversations, rather than stages for Emma's performances. Holidays felt peaceful without the underlying tension of Emma's schemes. Dad started involving me in business decisions, asking for advice and respecting my expertise. Mom began sharing family history and traditions she'd never bothered teaching me, assuming Emma would be the one to carry them forward. They were treating me like a full family member for the first time in my adult life. The financial restitution from Emma's conviction helped repair some damage to our parents' retirement funds, though the psychological healing would take much longer. They'd learned expensive lessons about enabling manipulation and ignoring red flags. Marcus reached out several months after the wedding, thanking me for exposing Emma's true nature before he'd married her and possibly had children with her. He'd started dating someone new, someone who appreciated his kindness without trying to exploit it. "You saved me from years of financial and emotional abuse," he told me over coffee. I thought I was helping Emma overcome her problems, but she was actually creating problems to manipulate me. The ripple effects of Emma's exposure continued spreading throughout our community. Other families began questioning suspicious financial activities they'd previously ignored. Several criminal cases opened as people found courage to report family members who'd been stealing from them. My nonprofit organization expanded its mission to include education about recognizing manipulation tactics and preventing family financial abuse. We developed workshops for parents, spouses, and siblings about setting healthy boundaries with manipulative family members. The work was deeply satisfying, allowing me to transform my own painful experience into help for other victims. Every case we solved, every family we helped heal, every criminal we exposed, felt like continued justice for what Emma had put me through. But the greatest satisfaction came from finally living authentically within my own family, respected and valued for who I'd always been rather than punished for Emma's crimes. The golden child was gone, and I'd taken my rightful place as the daughter who'd always deserved their love and respect. Justice had been served, but recovery was ongoing, and more rewarding than revenge had ever been. 2 years have passed since Emma's wedding disaster, and I'm writing this from my new office. The nonprofit organization that started as personal revenge has grown into a nationally recognized resource for family fraud victims. We've helped over 300 families expose financial abuse, recovered more than $2 million in stolen assets, and sent dozens of family criminals to prison. Emma was released on parole last month after serving 18 months of her 3-year sentence. She'll be on supervised release for another decade with strict restrictions on accessing other people's financial accounts. The woman who once manipulated everyone around her now reports to a parole officer weekly and works minimum wage jobs while paying restitution that will follow her for life. She attempted to contact me twice since her release, once through our parents and once through a carefully worded letter expressing remorse and asking for forgiveness. Both times I declined to respond. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt, and Emma burned ours to the ground with years of manipulation and theft. Our parents have made remarkable progress in therapy and rebuilding our relationship. Dad officially transferred 30% ownership of his business to me, recognizing both my competence and the years of overlooked contributions I'd made. Mom started a support group for parents who'd enabled criminal children, helping other families recognize manipulation before it destroyed their relationships. They'll never fully recover from the shame of publicly favoring a criminal daughter over an honest one, but they've learned to live with consequences while working to become better people. Family gatherings are smaller now but infinitely more genuine without Emma's toxic presence. The extended family has also evolved. Cousins who once competed for Emma's attention now appreciate authentic relationships without underlying manipulation. Holiday celebrations feel lighter without the constant drama Emma always created. Grandmother often says the family is healthier without its most toxic member. Marcus married his new girlfriend last fall, a small, intimate ceremony that emphasized love over spectacle. He invited me to attend, grateful that my exposure of Emma had saved him from a lifetime of financial and emotional abuse. Their marriage appears genuinely happy, built on honesty rather than manipulation. The media attention from Emma's case eventually faded, but the impact continues growing. True crime podcasts featured our story, domestic abuse organizations use our case as a teaching example, and law enforcement agencies credit my investigation techniques with improving their family fraud protocols. Most importantly, hundreds of fraud victims have found courage to seek justice after hearing my story. People who'd been gaslit by manipulative family members finally understood they weren't crazy. They were crime victims who deserved support rather than blame. The nonprofit work has become my calling, transforming personal pain into meaningful purpose. We've developed educational materials, trained law enforcement officers, and created support networks for families dealing with financial abuse. Every success feels like continued justice for what Emma put me through. Emma's crimes cost our family more than money. They stole years of genuine relationships, created decades of resentment, and nearly destroyed our parents' retirement security. But they also revealed important truths about manipulation, favoritism, and the courage required to seek justice when family members commit crimes. Looking back, I'm almost grateful for Emma's betrayal. Her manipulation forced me to develop investigative skills that became the foundation for meaningful work. Her lies taught me the value of truth and authentic relationships. Her crimes showed me that sometimes family members don't deserve unconditional loyalty. The golden child fell from grace spectacularly, facing consequences that matched her years of manipulation and theft. Justice wasn't just served, It was delivered with interest compound consequences that will follow Emma for decades, while I build a legacy of helping other victims find their own justice. Family loyalty should never mean enabling criminal behavior. Blood relationships don't excuse fraud, manipulation, or abuse. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold family members accountable for their crimes, even when, especially when, other relatives refuse to see the truth. Emma thought she could manipulate and steal her way through life while using me as a scapegoat for her crimes. She discovered that some people can't be broken by gaslighting, that some victims will fight back with evidence and determination, and that golden children can fall just as hard as anyone else when their true nature is exposed. I want to hear from all of you who've made it to the end of this incredible journey with me. Have you ever dealt with a manipulative family member who seemed to get away with everything? How did you handle the situation? Did you find the courage to speak up? Or are you still struggling with family members who refuse to see the truth? Your stories matter, and sharing them helps other people realize they're not alone in dealing with toxic family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps other people find these important conversations about family justice and standing up to manipulation. Subscribe and ring the notification bell, because I share more real-life stories about overcoming family trauma and finding the strength to seek justice when no one else will. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they don't have to accept abuse just because it comes from family members. Sometimes the most important battles we fight are against the people who should love us unconditionally but choose manipulation instead. Thank you for joining me on this journey from family scapegoat to justice warrior. Remember that you deserve respect, honesty, and genuine love from your family members. And if you're not getting those things, it's okay to create boundaries, seek justice, and build the life you deserve. Until next time, keep fighting for truth and never let anyone convince you that family loyalty means accepting abuse. You're stronger than you know, and justice is always worth pursuing, even when it comes at the cost of toxic family relationships.